we're back from our test flights, and the Roma F6 did an amazing job. So good, in fact, that this is the first time I experienced a situation where the more I flew the drone, the more and more I loved the drone. So let's talk about it. So we got up there, plugged the drone on, put my goggles on, and the first thing I noticed was just the clarity of the image. The camera on here is really good. The Phoenix 2 is great. The dynamic range was amazing, very clear, very accurate colors. The only thing I noticed though was the field of view was just slightly narrower than I'm used to. So just be aware of that. No big issues though. Now, once I got past the image and the goggles, it was time to arm the drone, but I really couldn't do that because this requires a certain amount of satellites before I can arm it. Now, the default setting in beta flight is 8 required satellites. I did lower this to 6 just because of my experience with other drones in that area. And sure enough, 6 was enough. Now, to get my first couple of satellites, it did take me 6.5 minutes to acquire those. And then an additional 2 minutes to get the required amount of satellites to arm this drone, in my case, 6 satellites. Now, subsequent flights were a lot quicker. After the first flight, I could receive my required amount of satellites after 10 to 15 seconds. So a lot faster after the first initial lock on satellites. Now, if you want to see a video on my GPS settings and failsafe of this drone, leave a comment down below and I'll be happy to make that video for you guys. So now that I have the required amount of satellites, I had a home point, I was able to arm the drone, and immediately I could just hear the noise from the propellers. These things are significantly louder than my normal 3.5-inch drone, and just slightly louder than my 5-inch drone. Now, it really didn't have a frequency or high pitch to it, but you can just hear the amount of air and noise this thing was producing. So this thing does displace a lot of air with these 6-inch propellers. Anyways, we flew this thing around and it flew pretty good, guys. And I got comfortable with this drone really fast, guys, to the point where I was doing acro in no time. And this thing does acro pretty well. The flight control didn't freak out. I don't know if it's the tune in here or just the nature of the frame here, but really no vibrations. Everything worked pretty well. We did, as I said before, have 5 to 10 mile an hour winds, and never once was this thing influenced by the weather. One thing I did notice immediately though was the added weight, but I did notice that the rates on this is tuned up pretty high, especially the roll rates. If you move that stick, this thing will move pretty aggressively, pretty quickly, and I'm sure that's to combat the added weight of this drone. I got used to it pretty quickly, but initially it was just, wow, this thing rolls pretty fast. And you can see it in the video. Sometimes I'm doing a dive and did a spin, and you can see how quickly this thing rolls. Almost like the camera frame rates couldn't keep up with how quickly it would roll. So maybe if you want to do some cinematic flying, you might want to lower the roll rates on this. Now, the pitch isn't that bad. It's actually where it probably should be, but that roll rate is pretty quick. It makes it very agile, especially for a larger drone. I'm talking about the propellers and the noise this thing generates. The props and the motor combination on this is really good. I had adequate punch out power all the time. Never once did I feel like this thing was underpowered. It really isn't as nimble as a 5-inch drone as you would suspect, just because of the added weight, but the power is more than adequate. This thing is a beast when it comes to power, guys. Okay, so after doing some basic freestyle maneuvers, I decided it was time to try this thing long range. We have a pretty good VTX, we have GPS on here, and we have a pretty decent receiver. So I changed the battery, went for a nice little long range flight, and this thing did an amazing job, guys. Now, I did put the larger recommended battery on here, the 1500 milliamp hour battery for the long range flight. I was overall impressed with the performance. Actually, I was blown away because I've flown other long range drones, and sure enough, guys, I feel like I had a lot more margin, so I'd go really far. The video didn't skip a beat. I did turn the power up to 1 watt, and the image, as you can see, is super clear, no breakup. It felt like I was just flying a couple yards away from me, but I was way out there. And the same thing goes for my RX, although this is a plug-and-play version. The RX worked pretty well. Now, I was pretty confident as well because I did have the GPS on board. So if I did have a fail-safe, then I would know my coordinates, or I would have the GPS rescue and it would come back to me. So I think this is an amazing drone. It does a really good job, guys, at long-range cruising, and it is super smooth. I didn't experience any vibrations. I don't know what the winds were at altitude, but usually, typically, it's stronger winds at altitude. I didn't see any buffering or any vibrations in the flight. So this would also be a good drone for cinematic flying. If you want to do some long-range cinematic flying, guys, it's really smooth. During that flight, I had over 11 satellites available to me, so precision was really accurate. Okay, so talking about range and VTX performance, let's talk about the VTX a little bit here. For the most part, I was flying this thing at the default 400 milliwatts, and I was using this short antenna here. And guys, never wanted to have an issue. I'm sure for most people, if you're gonna fly freestyle in the vicinity of yourself, you can get away with 400 milliwatts, no need to go even higher. I did crank it up to 800 and then 1 watt when I did my long range flying, and as you saw in the image, no breakup, guys. All right, so let's talk about the receiver a bit. Although this does not come with a receiver, this is the plug and play version. I do want to talk about it because it did perform well. You do have the TPU mount here made specifically for these type of antennas, whether it be an Immortal T for a Crossfire or this one here for the Express LRS. The only reason why I bring up the receiver is because at one time I was close to myself. I was doing just some random freestyle, just doing some flips, rolls, just random stuff, being a fool. And I experienced a fail-safe pretty close to me, and at the worst time, because at this point I was so confident in the drone. And unfortunately, I was actually over water. I did a fail-safe, but luckily, yes guys, I had the GPS on board and the GPS rescue kicked in and brought the drone back to me. So I don't know what would have happened if I didn't have this on here. Probably would have just went into the water and just sank. And I probably would have been down who knows how much money for this whole setup here. You know, I said to say that, you know, this drone is well designed. Even if you lose reception, if you have the GPS set up properly, it could be really good or cheap insurance for your drone, guys. So I do highly recommend that you set that up. Now, as far as battery life, these batteries did a pretty good job. I did fly it on the 1300. I also have a 1250 here and also a 1500, which is the recommended battery. This thing is a pretty big beast. This is the recommended, so I'm sure you can go a little bit bigger than this as well. But I average between 5.5 to 6 minutes on the smaller batteries, and then 6.5 to 7 minutes on the larger 1500 milliamp hour batteries. And that's what mixed flying. I wasn't doing all acro. I was doing some smooth, steady flying, then some acro maneuvers, and it did a pretty good job. Now, I had some concerns about this battery connector here and if it would get into the props, but this is how they recommend it. This is a pretty cool system, guys. This is very convenient. Usually it's in the back here and you have to route the wires around. I don't see any issues with this at all. In fact, I think it's really convenient as far as connecting and disconnecting. It's really nice. I mean, and then you just unplug it when you're done and you're good to go. That's a cool design by Diatone, and not a lot of manufacturers are doing that, so I don't know if it's gonna catch on. Probably not, but it is very convenient, that's for sure. So having said all that and experiencing this drone for myself, what do I think about the Roma F6? Well, I do think that this is a great drone. It's a really feature-packed drone where everything works as or better than expected. It really is the jack of all trades. So now the question is, who is this drone for? Now, if you're the person that likes nice things, whether it be features, quality, or just fine details, this is the drone for you. Everything from the motors, these nice looking motors, down to the carbon fiber choice and even the engraving on the carbon fiber, to these side plates and this magnesium front. This drone here just screams premium. So if you're into that, this is the perfect quad for you. The second person who might want this drone is the person that wants everything in their drone. You can think of this as the Swiss Army knife of the FPV drone market. This thing does everything well. You want to do some freestyle flying? Well, this can do it with this modified X-frame. You want to do some long range flying? Well, you have this powerful VTX and this GPS on board for GPS rescue. You want to do cinematic and smooth flying? Well, this drone is capable, and with these bigger and larger motors, it can carry almost any action camera on the market, guys. So this thing does pretty much everything well. So if you're interested in a 6-inch drone, I would highly recommend you look into the Roma F6. This is a pretty capable drone. I haven't seen many people talk about this one in particular, and I do think that this is one of the most underrated drones in the FPV market. Now, if you're the pilot that's interested in dedicated long range and freestyle drones, I have two of my favorites right here. I've done full reviews on these drones and I'll leave them linked above so you can take a look at it. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace!